Well, welcome to another week here on this Monday, and we're excited about serving the Lord. Things are certainly moving forward here at our church, and we're thankful for that. I want to encourage you today with the same theme that I had yesterday as I spoke about Jonah, and that is that God wants each one of us to serve Him even with our past failures. God is ready to recommission anyone who is willing to be honest with Him. I can't help but think of the Apostle Peter, a man who had declared his loyalty to the Lord, who had been faithful and really humanly leading the disciples. He was one of the inner company of three that chose to be close to the Lord. He had strong faith. He was very clear in his declaration that Jesus was the Messiah and that he was deity. So he had so much right. And so when he didn't listen to the Lord with the warning about his denial and that he would have the opportunity there to stand for the Lord and he didn't do it, when that occurred and he saw the Lord look at him and he heard the rooster and realized what had happened, he was devastated. Understandably so. He had let the Lord down in the most crucial moment of all history. And if anyone would feel like there's really no hope, it would be Peter. For 3 days, he and the other men just commiserated. Judas had betrayed the Lord, and of course Christ had died on the cross. He was in the grave, and even though the Lord had told them what he was going to do, they were in unbelief. Miserable 3 days, but Peter stayed with them. But then Christ came out of the grave and met with the disciples, met with him personally. And of course he was thrilled. He realized that God had worked, but down deep in his soul he ached because he had failed. And he went back to fishing. Not because he was going to leave the cause of the Lord, he just didn't feel that he qualified any longer to be part of the leadership group that was going to get the message of the gospel out. It's a very understandable human perspective. But oh, how gracious the Lord was to go up to Galilee and then so arrange things that right at the same place on the shore of the Sea of Galilee, there in the northwest corner, where he commissioned him, he recommissioned Peter. And what a moment that was. 3 times he asked Peter if Peter loved him. Twice with the great word agape, the third time with the word that comes from phileo. And each time, of course, Peter couldn't come to the highest matter of agape because he had failed the Lord. But regardless, the Lord kept saying, "Feed my sheep, feed my lambs." And little did Peter know that in a matter of days, the Spirit of God would come. And because he believed God and went back with the disciples, went back to Jerusalem, he was there on the day of Pentecost. He saw the ascension 10 days before. He was key in the 10 days in between those two very important events. And it was him that God chose to have the Spirit come upon him and preach that great message at Pentecost, and 3,000 people were saved. Just think, Peter was able to not redeem himself, but have the opportunity to show courage in the midst of the very place where people were crying out, "Crucify him." And I think too, when he was put in prison some weeks later, he was in the very same hold that Christ had been the night of his denial. And so God gave him the opportunity to be right where he had been, and by the power of the Spirit of God, to be used again by God's grace. You may be stirred about the need of our day. God may be working in your heart, but you may have that tendency to say, "What's the use? I failed the Lord too long. How can I start now?" My friend, today's the day. This Monday, July the 6th. The 6th. And this is the day for all of us to move forward for Him. And God is ready to use you mightily if you'll trust Him today.